Well, hello and welcome to the Mindset Mentor, helping you cultivate a life you love. I'm Tania Kolar. On today's show, we are discussing the power of human connection. We all know that wonderful, warm, fuzzy feeling when we get that warm embrace, when we have a meaningful conversation. We really feel validated. We feel heard. We feel significant. And this really is a basic human need. We need to feel validation and significance. So it's so important. And in fact, so many studies have been done to show that the physical and emotional well-being has such a direct correlation to human connection. So we really need to do what we can to foster better communication. Yes, even in the midst of a global pandemic, when we are feeling more isolated, we're feeling loneliness, popping up and filtering into our world. And studies again have shown that people who do feel lonely and isolated tend to suffer more from depression and greater health risks. So of course, we want to do what we can to foster better overall mental health, physical, emotional as well. So on today's show, I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Pete Bombaci, who is, an extraordinary human building human connection globally. He's created a movement called the GenWell Project, and we're going to delve into his passion project, what it means, and how you can, continue to foster better communication. And certainly we are creatures. Social creatures. So it really, truly is such an important topic. So I'm so glad that you're tuning in. And Pete, I want to welcome you to the Mindset Mentor.
Tania, an absolute pleasure to be here, and such a beautiful introduction. You hit on so many of the important points that I hope we can delve into a little deeper today for your listeners, because human connection, we all thrive with more human connection in our lives.
So well said. And I think it's so important right now because a lot of people are simply just surviving, given all of the changes that we are facing, as a society at large, right, as a world, at large. So it really is important to do what we can to thrive, not only individually, but as a collective. So I want to talk about the GenWell Project, your amazing passion project that you started years ago, well before, we were in a global pandemic. So I want to talk about, first of all, what the project entails and where was it born? What idea was the impetus for it all?
Yeah, it goes back to actually, the original inspiration was 2003, the summer blackout, eastern seaboard of North America. 50 million people went without power for anywhere from 2 to 7 days. And what we saw during that time, and certainly what I saw on a street in Toronto at about 9 o'clock at night, I'd been at a friend's house for a barbecue, and I walked out on his front porch. And what I saw was a street filled with people. And, ball hockey, sticks, bicycles, hot dogs, drinks, hamburgers, people celebrating life. And the funny thing was, as I went over and talked to a couple of people, I said, when was the last time you guys did this? And the reaction was never.
It was the first time.
It was the first time. And the reality was, what stuck with me that night was, oh my gosh. So we know Maslow told us back in 1943 that love and belonging is a human innate need. You touched on it in the introduction. But what I was recognizing is we were living in the most fast-paced, distracted, and pressure-filled world in history. And the advent of technology has disconnected us even further. And so what I sensed that night was, that's all we need. We just need a catalyst. We need something, and not that we can turn off the power every Thursday or Friday night, but we need a catalyst that reminds us about the importance of human connection and then gives us the excuse to make it happen. And so we launched the GenWell Project. Our mission is to make the world a happier and healthier place by reminding people about the importance of human connection. And secondarily, maybe most importantly, catalyzing people around a couple times a year when we want to inspire people to celebrate human connection, not focus on the negative, not the issues that we're addressing, but allowing everybody to come together because we want to celebrate life.
I love that. Absolutely. And I think it is really important to really focus on the positives because the positives and negatives exist simultaneously, right? So it's what we want to focus on that we're really going to start to experience in our day, in our moments. So, even if in the most dire situations, there is positivity. So try, I always try to get people to really focus on anything else in the moment where they're feeling overwhelmed and they're feeling feeling that they are isolated and they're lonely and they don't know what to do next. Find anything, think of a thought. It could be just a thought for just a few seconds, for a moment, and continue to expand on that so that we can foster, a greater sense of well-being. And I also think that it's so important for us to, reach out to others and help others when they are going through that challenging time. And so I want to, delve in a little bit deeper to, that summer in 2003, where all of a sudden, there's a big street party where people may not have necessarily interacted with each other, not to any in-depth conversation. But so what was the repercussions of that? Did you see any great, growth from that in relationships and connections, or did it just fall away? Was it just for a period of a few days? And so what happened? What did that look like?
Well, I certainly think in my life, and I didn't go back to that street per se. That was the catalyst that had me launch the GenWell Project in 2016. And our mission was to get people connected before the crisis, because when we're in a crisis, making the time or building those bonds becomes much more challenging. And we've seen that in the pandemic, where when you're fearful of other people because you're fearful of of getting COVID, the reality is it's tougher to build that connection. What we wanted to do was inspire people to get connected before the crisis comes. And that crisis, oftentimes we only think about crises like the blackout or the pandemic or a snowstorm. But the reality is we need to all wake up and understand that people deal with their own crisis behind the four walls of their own home each and every day, whether that's an illness, whether that's divorce, job loss, financial pressures. So we need to understand that life has its ups and downs. And the greatest thing that we can do, not only for our own health, but for the health of the people around us, is build those human connections and those support networks that will be there for us, that will be on call, that will be the people who will get your groceries, carry you, help you, support you in whatever way you need, even if it's just a conversation. That those are the relationships that we want to help people connect before we get to the crisis. So on that day, yes, I saw those people getting together on that street. But what we also know is that in a short crisis, and this is interesting with the pandemic, with short crises, we're really good in the time of crisis. We're all there helping each other out. But what normally happens is 2 weeks later, we get back into the rat race and back into the wheel, and we're running on the treadmill. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I feel lonely and isolated, or I don't feel healthy, or whatever that looks like in your life. And what we want to do is create the healthy connection habits by having a couple weekends a year. We've kind of paused our 2 weekends a year, which we held to activate people in spring and fall, because right now we're waking up every day in the middle of a pandemic that is raising our consciousness about the need for human connection. So right now our focus is really about education. Most people don't recognize that social connection now is said to be more important than eating well and exercise. Most of us went to school and were told that if you exercise 30 minutes a day and if you eat the Canadian food guide, that you'd live a long and happy and healthy life. And what the research now shows is that social connection is the single largest indicator of happiness in our lives, reduces anxiety and depression, which is skyrocketing certainly through the pandemic, increases empathy, compassion, and resilience, something that we see not just in Canada, but we could use a little more of south of the border and around the world. Strengthens our immune system. So if you're sick, it makes you healthier quicker. Also keeps and prevents you from getting sick. Strengthens your self-confidence, and incredibly so, increases your chances of living longer by up to 50%. But Tania, none of us were ever educated. And this is why the GenWell Project exists.
And I think this is part of why this pandemic, is happening, as just really, a time for us all to pause, to reflect, and to rise above adversity, and to really understand that, we have become disconnected, which is ironic because we have technology, which is so wonderful in connecting us and providing us the ability to, do incredible things around the world globally. But it also has caused a divide in that we now have become obsessed with technology in some cases for some people. You have even children, playing video games all day. I mean, there's been studies that they've, talked about kids not taking a break. They'll play for hours and hours because they're addicted. They won't eat. They won't go to the bathroom because they are so addicted to that technology. So I think it's really important in life, in all cases, not just through technology, but it's really important to find a balance. So addiction is one thing, and we can become addicted to anything, right? And so really important to, utilize technology for its benefits. And I think to step back and recognize when we're overusing technology to, shield the rest of the world from us, because human connection is invaluable. It is essential. We need human connection in order to thrive in business, in our personal relationships, and in everything. And just as a society, I mean, community is built through connection. And when we're all disconnected, then we have no community. So what are some of the ways, Pete, that we can, foster connection, better human connection in this particular environment where we are in the midst of a global pandemic and we're told to, stay at home, stay within our bubbles? What kind of connection, can we have moving forward?
Well, it's interesting that what the research shows is that it's not just those deep, meaningful connections that make us happier and healthier. It's also what I refer to as casual collisions. That postman, that fireman. I feel like Mr. Rogers kind of talking about all the people in the neighborhood, or it's the barista at Starbucks. It's whoever was in your community are all important. And even the people that we used to see at the water cooler and the coffee machine at the office. So I think it's understanding who it is that can add value to our life and whose lives we can add value to. So certainly, within our bubble, the people that we're tight-knit relationships, probably living within our home, maybe one ring around that area might be in your bubble right now. Well, make sure you're making the time to connect. To your point about technology, it's easy to get distracted. We might sit in the same room, but we may not actually be connecting. So making sure that you're putting value into those connections. And here's the interesting thing is we may expand our bubbles and shrink our bubbles based on COVID protocols moving forward, but our core bubble is never going to leave us. So those are the people that we should be working hard to build solid relationships, find the things that drive each of us, and make sure that we're fulfilling the needs that each of us have. Because I think that's probably the biggest enlightenment a lot of us have had of, wow, that bubble is actually my go-to. Those are the people. And most of us weren't making the time to invest in those relationships prior to COVID-19. Beyond that, whether it's at the office, making sure you have regular things in your calendar. If the way we used to book meetings in our calendar is the way we need to think about social connection now. If you need to put it in a regular meeting to get together with your friends, whether it's virtual or through physical distancing, then put it in the calendar. If you prioritize it and put it in your calendar, it will happen. If you try to do it spontaneously, it may happen once in a while, but too often it ends up a time of crisis when you're feeling really uneasy, whether you're anxious or depressed or stressed out. Then you pick up the phone, and picking up the phone at that time is always more challenging. So if you got regular occasions in the book, I read a great one this week, which was the idea of, hey, oftentimes people just like to work with other people. So turn your Zoom on, call a friend and say, hey, why don't we just stay on Zoom and work together today? Because I've got to work. But you know how we love to banter, whether it's about sports or the weather or whatever. Keep that banter alive just like you would be in the office. And that's whether you're at home cooking dinner or whether you're cleaning the house, do it with other people. Give yourselves the opportunity to feel connected as best as possible. Look, digital technology will never replace the value of human connection, but it is a great supplement to the relationships that we will get back to soon enough when we find, the cure here, or we find the vaccine and the treatments. We will have a celebration of all celebrations of human connection, but we need to do the right things right now. And using virtual technology or physical distancing are great ways to maintain some of those really meaningful relationships.
Absolutely. I love that because there's a lot of people who are faced in that situation where they are working from home. They are so used to, having the office environment, and it's been a real adjustment for them. And a lot of people, are not coping well with that. Some people, it's easy for them. They're okay with being a little bit more, isolated, so to speak, whatever that looks like, whether you're by yourself or with other family members. But it can be a huge shift and, cause a mental decline when you're not used to that. As humans, we don't love change, right? I mean, change is certainly necessary in evolution and, for our, greater growth, of course, but we don't always love it. And it doesn't feel easy in the moment. So I love that, the idea of setting it in and putting it in your calendar, because we can easily forget. We also need to, I think, pencil in and schedule some self-care time. There's the human connection with others, but we also have to have a connection to ourselves. And the perfect opportunity is now, where we have more time. Not everyone. Some people are finding themselves more busy than ever, in this situation. But it is a time for, it's a great opportunity to reflect and to say, all right, well, how can I take care of myself? How can I take care of others? And what can I give? One thing that you talked about, the importance of your bubble and the people around you who are in your bubble, making them feel great. And I think that's so important. Again, whether that is, the barista, as you said, the delivery person. And you want to leave people, especially now when there's so much, hatred going on in the world today, this big divide. I think it's so important to treat everyone, with the law of increase. So leave them with an impression of increase. You're giving them something, a wonderful feeling. So when they leave that interaction with you, that they feel elated, they feel uplifted. I'll give you an example. The other day, I had ordered some delivery, takeout or delivery food for delivery.
Yeah.
And the driver called and asked me if I could come down. I live in a condo. Asked if I could come down because he wasn't able to come up. And I said, yeah. I said, okay. And he says they won't let me leave it at the front. And I said, oh, well, that's odd. I said, okay. I said, no problem. So I went down and I met this delivery man, and he was quite upset. And he was upset because he said that, my concierge, they treated him poorly. And, he was really quite upset about it. And, I let him talk and let him vent. And, he was saying all the things that went wrong and, the possibilities as to why, it could have been, a racial issue, and certainly that's how he felt. And I just said, you know what? I said, it's just you and I standing here, just the two of us. I said, there's only one race, and that's the human race. And I said, so I understand. I said, nobody should be feeling like that. I said, but, it's an unusual time. Everybody's hypersensitive. I said, so, let's just move forward. And, I want to validate him because he said, I have a full-time job and I'm working hard to support my family. And I said, yeah, I said, you're a good man. I understand that. You're a good man, because sometimes that's all people need to hear, especially now where there's all this, as I said, like a divide against people, but we are one. And I think when we can really recognize that, the world is a much better place, and that human connection now becomes so much easier and now becomes natural.
Yeah, Tanya, I couldn't, and thank you for doing what you did with that gentleman. I think that's such a beautiful story and inspiring words for us all to hear. One of the pieces of research shows that increased empathy and compassion is what comes out of spending time with each other. It's really difficult for people to see somebody else in a different light when they don't know them and they haven't spent time with them. And you see the political polarization that's happening south of the border. We've created both physical and emotional walls between, different aspects of society. And you can see where that leads by the seeding of fear that, what we call our leaders are doing. And, I'm not a political type person. I like to think of myself as pragmatic in my political alignment. It's, hey, how can we do the right thing that everybody wins? And I know that right now, based on the research, one of the greatest things that we can all do is make time to connect with people that don't look like us, that don't sound like us, who haven't been here as long as us, or maybe they've been here longer than us, and we need to spend some time with them and understand their perspective as well. So at the end of the day, human connection is about health and wellness, but it's about something much bigger. It's about creating a world in which we all live happier and healthier, and we live at peace, which I think is something we could all use a little more of.
Yes, and we will continue this conversation and learn how we can all live happier and healthier and stay more connected with each other when we come back from this break. You're listening to the Mindset Mentor on Sauga 960 AM. Stay with us. Well, hello and welcome back to the Mindset Mentor on 960 AM. We are continuing the conversation on the power of human connection. My guest today has created an incredible passion project called the GenWell Project, which is all about educating and building human connection, on a global scale, which is phenomenal. I think it's such a beautiful initiative. Pete Bombaci, great to have you on the show, and I'm so excited that we are helping to shed a light on the importance of human connection, because I think sometimes it goes amiss. We get so caught up in our day-to-day, in our lives, and whatever that looks like. Everyone's, structure is different, but we kind of forget sometimes, and we get annoyed with people quite easily. And I think especially now where emotions are running high, we're a little bit more irritable. You see people arguing, in the grocery store, and you think, okay, well, again, we talked about compassion, so important. So when you see those moments, try to look at it with compassionate eyes. And I see situations like that, and I say, that's just fear, kicking in and taking over. So you want to send love instead of hate. And I think sometimes that's not quite easy for us to do when we are experiencing our own fear and anxiety. So again, thank you so much for doing what you do, and getting the word out there.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. It's Dr. Robert Waldinger who runs the study at Harvard, which is the 80-year study about happiness. And he did a round table at the start of COVID. And here's the guy who spent his whole life analyzing what makes us happy. And he said, with the insecurity of not knowing where this is going and when it's going to finish, he said we all need to just be a little kinder to each other. And I think it's such a great message. I don't think we needed research to understand that. I think it's just about understanding nobody has gone through this pandemic unscathed in some way, shape, or form. If you're extremely wealthy and you've lost your business, or you've had that depleted, if you didn't have food or water or shelter, the fundamental needs, fortunately the government and organizations have stepped up to fill that hole. But it doesn't matter whether you are male, female, young, old, we're all struggling in our own little way, or big way, to be honest with you. And so I think just recognizing that gives us all an opportunity, and also recognizing how important a hello, how you doing, picking up the phone, a conversation can make all the difference in somebody's day, in their week, and maybe even in their life right now. So it doesn't always need to be a donation. It doesn't always need to be a check. Right now, maybe the greatest gift that we could give each other is just a conversation.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. It certainly goes a long way. I know my sister was telling me she was at, I think it was the grocery store or, pharmacy, what have you. And, there was a woman there, and, they kind of just nodded hello. And the woman, removed her mask for a moment. She said, I just wanted you to see that I was smiling. I thought, oh,
I
that's
love
great.
that.
So
Yeah, that's
great though, right?
beautiful.
I think we're missing that smile, that beautiful feeling when we see somebody smile. You can still smile with your eyes. You can tell when people are smiling, and so I think it's really important to convey that emotion. And just again, I love that, your whole mission is really to help to educate people on, the kindness and compassion. If we look at, let's say, even, bullying, if we take bullying, for example, right? Let's say people are aware of it, but they don't do anything about it. We, close a blind eye to it. Think back to school, and everybody knows a kid that was bullied at school, and that's awful, because if we all just approach that with compassion, that bullying would stop, right? It's like what we're focusing on. I think today there's a lot of, let's say, anti, bullying, but how about, pro kindness? I think is a great thing to focus on. And if somebody is struggling, give them a hand. If there is somebody who sits alone and eats lunch by themselves, have lunch with them. Now, obviously, we're in a situation where it's going to be physical distance, right? So you're not going to sit close, too close by, but there are things that you can do, or, maybe tell somebody so that somebody can do something about it, right? If we don't want to step in. But I think there's so many situations in life and everyday situations that are, analogous to bullying and what that looks like, and the repercussions of that.
Tania, I think your example is a great one, and the reason I think that is because most people think that this is just about old people being lonely and isolated. What is the greatest way to overcome a bully? Is to surround the other person with people, so that that bully isn't able to take on that individual in a one-on-one and threaten or create fear in that person's life. Human connection transcends everything, every illness, every cause, every issue, divorce, bullying, job loss. A part of the inspiration behind the GenWell Project was my mom, who grew up in the Second World War in Northern Ireland. And she told me of the story of how they survived during the Second World War. And it was all about community, whether it was food, whether it was childcare, whether it was your next job, whether it was, somebody had a baby and you needed to build the back end addition onto a house. The community came together. And I think in a way, maybe, and we're very blessed to live in this wonderful country, but maybe we took it for granted. And maybe we haven't really valued, because we did live in the greatest growth era in the history of the world since the Second World War, where money was easy to come by for most of the time, jobs were, bonuses. And as a result, we started to believe that we could do it ourselves, that we didn't need anybody else. And I think I'm 54 years old. And the reality is I've never been through a war. The worst thing we've had to deal with is high interest rates. That's a little different. And I think we're now waking up at a time where, unfortunately, over the last 40, 50 years, we've built taller fences and bigger houses for smaller families. We built back decks instead of front porches. We've done everything to ourselves to create the physical isolation. And when you look at social media and technology, it's created the emotional barriers between us. And now we're waking up in the middle of a pandemic and going, I don't feel so good. And I think a big part of that, I don't feel so good, is that we didn't recognize how important those hellos, those hi, how are yous, the hugs, to be honest with you, the high fives, the fist bumps, the elbow bumps, all those things, those physical, and you talked about the smile at the grocery store, those physical and those human connections that we made throughout the course of our day that we were almost oblivious to, that we are now on the other side of this, never going to take for granted again. And hopefully with the support of the GenWell Project, we'll celebrate it at least a couple times a year. And hopefully, most importantly, every day, in the little ways in which we can contact other people and make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, it's really life-changing, isn't it, when people reach out, they connect with you. And we also need to be mindful of the reality, I think, that we want to create sometimes, because we can get stuck in a mindset of being a victim. This pandemic happened, I can't cope, I'm frustrated, nobody's calling me, I'm isolated. So in those cases, we really need to now get proactive and reach out and connect with other people. I was talking to a gentleman and he said, well, none of my family contacted me, for a week. And I thought, okay, but you didn't contact them either. So we created that scenario because it could be a belief that you have that nobody loves me, nobody reaches out, and we perpetuate that because we believe it. But we can just pick up the phone and call someone. We're reaching out, we're connecting. So we don't have to wait for others. If you are feeling isolated, it really truly is important to reach out. And if there is no family or friends that you can, reach out to, or that you want to reach out to, then reach out to a support group. Reach out to people who you can connect with. So human connection is not about just, your bubble, people that you love and your friends. It's a support group, perhaps. Join a mastermind group, people who can help you maybe achieve your goals or uplift you when you're feeling down and depressed. Because yes, is a global pandemic depressing at times? Yeah, absolutely, right. But can it be, a positive? Absolutely. So we really need to get proactive. And Are there some other ways that you can suggest, Pete, for people to get proactive now in really fostering better human connection, and particularly people who maybe not are not so great at connecting, with others?
Yeah, I'll say one thing, and this comes from a story that happened on one of our. We've held 7 GenWell weekends thus far, which were our 2 weekends a year when we wanted to inspire all Canadians to get connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an outreach. So this is pre-pandemic. I had an outreach from an elderly gentleman. Actually, he was only 60 something, so he wasn't that old, to be honest with you. But he reached out to me and he said, Pete, I burnt every bridge in my life. My family won't talk to me. I don't have any old friends from work. I haven't built any hobbies. I don't have anybody that I'm connected to. What would you recommend? Well, first off, I went and had a coffee with him, and it was an amazing experience to see this guy who was willing to come and have a conversation, because I think he thought that I think he thought that I would have the solution, or maybe that I was the solution. And that first step, as we talk about, research shows that a conversation can increase your self-confidence. Well, he knew that he could have a dialogue with me. But most importantly, what I say to people, look, if you are struggling to connect with family because you've got barriers there, maybe you've fought with your neighbors and you don't know, you can't talk to them, maybe you don't have any friends. My big belief is always about purpose. Who is the somebody that you could reach out to, whether it's, to your point, there's certainly go to a helpline if you're in crisis, or, other lines. And right now there's so many webinars and different things you can get on. If you can't find something to tune into right now that is a topic that you might be interested in, even if it's watching the US election, then, I don't think you're trying hard enough. But I think the idea of volunteering, like, I know that earlier in the year that Kids Help Phone was recruiting people to actually do texting with young people, and you had to go through a process in order to get approved and get licensed, or whatever the process was. But there's always that opportunity to make a difference in the life of somebody else. Maybe it's a senior on the street. Maybe it's somebody with a handicap. Maybe it's somebody who's got 5 kids running around and who can't find the time in the middle of the pandemic between homeschooling and feeding to go to the grocery store. Every one of us has an opportunity to, whether it's pick up the phone or knock on the door and just say, hey, I just noticed that, you haven't made it outside of your home in a week, and I live across the street. I thought, could I help you at all? And that feeling of not only the connection in asking, but number 2, the opportunity to make a difference in the life of somebody else by doing a kind gesture, is just a great way to build that relationship that will be entrenched moving forward. That person will feel much better about having a conversation with you because you actually cared. And I think if we can all just remember that those little deeds, those little acts of kindness can be the start of great relationships that will carry on for days, weeks, months, and maybe lifetimes.
Oh, so good. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's so important to, to volunteer and to do things for others, and whatever that looks like. I mean, that could be within your bubble, that could be within your family, and that could also be for siblings. Maybe there's been a little bit of a sibling, rivalry, so to speak, and we're not connecting. And this is an opportunity now to say, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to do something nice for my brother or my sister, or for your spouse. Just anything, because it does make us feel better. It changes the physiology in our body. We feel good. We feel the energy, and, we now can, enjoy our day much better. We can feel more fulfilled, happier. And really that's what human connection is all about. We talked a little bit about some of the negative health benefits. I want to talk a little bit more about that as well, so that, people can, have a listen, and then start to think perhaps where they can improve and help themselves in a situation where they are feeling depressed, they're feeling isolated, and some action steps that they can take to move forward in a more productive way.
Well, as I mentioned a little earlier, so it reduces anxiety and depression. So from a mental health standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
there's a step that they can take. In that recent study out of Harvard 6 weeks ago, single greatest action that we all can take to prevent depression. The whole purpose of the GenWell Project is to get people to connect before they get to being sick or feeling a crisis of any sort. From a physical standpoint, there's a direct correlation between loneliness and isolation and type 2 diabetes, between the stress and anxiety that comes from isolation and loneliness leads to inflammation, chronic illness, acute heart conditions. There's so many different mental and physical health implications of not maintaining a healthy social connection network that we all need to be thinking about it a little bit more. And the reality is, as I think I touched on earlier, is none of us were ever educated on this information. So it's not a surprise that most of us hear it and we kind of go, really? Could that really be the case? Well, I will give you the research. They can head over to genwellproject.org. There's articles about all the pieces of research. We list all the positives of human connection. We list the negatives of human connection. And we give you ideas, whether you're a senior, whether you're a young person, a student, a family, you live in a condo or an apartment building. We've got tips for people to get connected in all of those areas. However you want to segment the population, there's opportunities for all of us to get connected. And we need to connect more now than ever before. And let's all look forward and let's paint this beautiful picture, because when this is all over, we are going to have a celebration of all celebrations when we can get back to hugging, connecting, conversing, and not having to worry about a mask and 6 feet and all those things. And I don't know when that is, and that's not important. The important thing is that we keep that as our little flame that keeps shining brightly, and that we will appreciate it more than we've ever appreciated it before. That barista, that postman, that mailman, that person you see at the bus stop on the way to work, all those people you saw in the hallway, at the office, at the water cooler, at the coffee machine. When we get back to be able to do that again, in whatever shape or form that looks like, let's remember that those are the people that really we miss the most and who we now recognize how much of a difference they made in our lives.
Yes. I was just thinking as you said that, you were talking about, let's have that flame, right? So the end goal. So when we are out of this, what can we do? And, I think it's important to maybe let others know what your plans are, that you would like to get together. I had a message from a friend from elementary school that I haven't spoken to in years, and sent a message saying that, when this is all over, first to say, I hope you're doing okay. But then, said that after this is all, over, he really is wanting to get together with a bunch of friends. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. And he said, he considers me one of those people. And I thought, what a beautiful thing and what a great message. And so, I felt great from that interaction, a simple message. It was through social media. And again, a great way to stay connected is through social media. Don't be shy. Get out of your comfort zone. Sometimes we feel uncomfortable to reach out to someone, especially if you haven't spoken to them for years. Or a lot of people find themselves in a situation where they really want to reach out to someone that they've cared for deeply, that maybe, they had a bad ending or just not a great relationship anymore for whatever reason, and they don't want to reach out. Well, I think that if you have that feeling, that gut feeling that you want to reach out to someone, then you really should take some action to reach out. Again, it could be a simple message, send an emoji, whatever. You don't have to have all these words, because sometimes we're at a loss for words, and that's okay. But I think it's important to let people know that you're thinking of them, and also to really help yourself to, handle some of the emotions that are going on inside the body right now, because there's a lot of emotions. Again, everybody I think is, quite hypersensitive, and there's a lot of hyperarousal, with stress and all of that. And I think that if there's anything that we can do to alleviate some of that stress and pressure that we're facing, go for it. It doesn't have to be a big thing.
Yeah, I'll say two things. Number one is that there is a study, Tanya, out there that says 90% of the time when people reach out to old friends, that both parties are happy that it happened. Mm-hmm. So how's that? And again, this is all the psychological game. It's like, oh, it's too long, I can't reach out. Oh, yeah. He won't want to or she won't want to. The reality is they want you to, so do it, because it's going to be a positive thing. And you've touched on technology a few times. The GenWell Project's not an anti-technology campaign. Our mission is to find the balance, which you talked about off the top. And I might even argue that the pandemic has actually awoken us on how we should use technology more positively versus the passive scrolling that most of us were doing to fulfill our busy days. But now look at you and I having this conversation virtually. I talked to a friend in Vancouver yesterday. I haven't spoken to him in 14 years. And
Wow.
that happened because I now feel like I've been given approval to reach out to even my closest friends who I haven't seen in a long time, that this has to be good enough because I can't do it face to face. And instead of waiting until the next time I'm in Vancouver, which based on the current circumstances, who knows when that's going to be, we'll then jump on a Zoom, jump on a Skype, jump on some virtual platform, make that connection. And as you just pointed out, because it will make you feel better and you will be happier and healthier as a result. And the great thing is, the other person will be as well.
And that is the power of human connection.
Ah, well said, my friend.
We're going to take a break and we're going to be right back here with the Mindset Mentor on Sauga 960 AM. And we are back here on Sauga 960 AM. You're listening to the Mindset Mentor. Today, we are continuing the conversation on the power of human connection. My friend Pete Bombaci joining us. He is an incredible visionary business and social leader and the founder of the GenWell Project, which is a great initiative, a global movement to connect people, the human connection element. So great to have you here. And boy, do we ever need the help in learning how to communicate better, I think, with people and how to stay connected given the whole global climate. But really, it's more than that. You created the GenWell Project before, obviously, the pandemic several years ago, but the idea was born quite a while ago, and it was a journey in the making. So you recognize the importance of human connection, of course, from the emotional side, but we also have the physical element of human connection. So what really does that look like and mean to you?
Yeah, I think the real key in this whole thing, Tanya, is I think a lot of people, when you think about social connection, a lot of people think of isolation and loneliness. So they immediately go to seniors and they say, "Oh, well, our seniors are really lonely, so we should start this campaign for that." And my response to them is, "Hey, actually, don't you think it's actually educating the rest of society that we have a loneliness issue in our seniors because it's actually you that they want to go see or have you come see." So, from one perspective, it's people think of isolation and loneliness. And on the other perspective, people think this is a mental health campaign. And we're not a mental health campaign because there's a lot of mental health organizations out there that are doing incredible work to support people that are battling their mental health crisis. Many of them through the pandemic. We know suicides are up, anxiety, stress is up. But what we want to be is a positive, proactive movement that keeps people happier and healthier. If you're happy and healthy and you spend time with other people, that's amazing. Maybe your opportunity is actually to help other people by reaching out. If you're not feeling yourself and you're just off a bit, maybe rather than a 10, you're a 9 or an 8. Well, maybe that's the time that you can pick up the phone or Skype or do a physical distance. It's about increasing the awareness for people about the importance of human connection as a part of living a happier and healthier life, and recognizing that this isn't just about mental health, and you don't need to be, depressed or considering suicide in order to think about taking action. But this actually relates to heart disease, chronic illness. It has to do with so many aspects of our physical health as well that we should all be incorporating in on a daily basis to make sure, especially while we're working from home and remotely right now, that we're putting those daily connections into the calendar and maintaining those connections. Just like you would say to yourself, geez, I should probably have a healthy salad today, or maybe I should actually go for a walk in nature. Yes, those are important too, but don't forget about your social connections because they're a key part of maintaining your happiness and your health.
Yeah, in fact, our friends or connections can help inspire us to maybe get back on track if we've taken a little detour, in our health goals. It's easy, during this time or during times of stress, anyways, to overeat or not eat healthfully. And also gyms are closed. If people are used to going to the gyms, or, they may not be doing the same amount of exercise. If they're used to walking to the office or at lunchtime taking that break, or, taking the kids to the park, they may not be doing the same things on a daily basis that they were doing to get physical activity. So I think it is important to sort of pause and take a look at, how we can now improve our physical health. If we've noticed that we've, gained some extra weight, start thinking about it, right? And use our connections to help get us to our goal.
I think it's a critical point, Tanya. My wife, as an example, started up a running group with our neighbors. They'd never done that before. It was literally, a few months into the pandemic. They haven't had their regular routines. There's no gym. There's no anything else open. It was like, hey, you guys just want to go for some morning walks or runs? And all of a sudden, there was 4 people signed up in one day because we're all craving it. And a lot of us need that reminder and that catalyst that makes us happen, that holds us accountable. I'll see you on Tuesday at 7:15 in the morning. And when you don't show up, you feel guilty. And they start asking you, Tanya, what happened to you? Where did you go? So I think, for a lot of us, especially to your point, as we go through this pandemic, and we may not feel quite as good as we normally do, and that little extra push, that little bit of inspiration from a friend, a family member, a neighbor, whether it's eating healthier, whether it's exercise, whether it's mindfulness practices, maybe some gratitude. We know there's a long list of different initiatives that people can get started on right now. And they're all, whatever one you do, is a great step in the right direction to maintaining your happiness and health through this crazy, crazy pandemic.
Yeah, it certainly is, a challenging time or an interesting time, of sorts. And yes, we absolutely can foster better physical and mental health when we take action and we take a look at what's going on and we become aware, because I think awareness is certainly key. If we're not aware of what we're doing, then we can't change and alter that pattern that we have. But take a look and and dissect your life today. What's going on? What would you like to improve? And take those small steps. And in fact, getting an accountability partner to help you achieve your goals might be a great start as well. Someone to keep you focused, to keep you, it's like your buddy, a partner, so that you're not feeling like you're doing this all alone, right? Because we start to, think that everything is so difficult. And when we start to think that it's difficult, it becomes difficult. And we don't want to get outside and go for that walk or, make a healthy meal because it's too much effort, it's too much work. But what we want to start doing is setting ourselves up for success. So plan ahead. A lesson that I've learned, because I'm a last minute person, I do everything kind of spontaneously, in terms of the foods that I eat as well. It's like whatever I feel like today. But I've come to learn the importance and the value of planning ahead. And the reason and the benefit is that I eat much healthier when I do plan ahead, as opposed to those last minute meals, or it's like, oh, I'm just too hungry now and I'm just gonna eat whatever is easy. And so not the best choices when I'm in that moment. So I think it's really important to, plan ahead. Let's get proactive and start setting ourselves up for success. Maybe the night before, get your breakfast ready or plan what you're going to have so that it's healthy. It's a healthy choice. And then we don't beat ourselves up after, because I think we have a tendency to do that. And at this time, the last thing that you want to do is beat yourself up. Guilt and, shame, emotions like that, they really serve no purpose. They don't benefit you. They don't benefit anyone else. So we really want to avoid those feelings and set yourself up for success.
Tanya, I think I need to hire you as my personal coach because all of those tips are, again, this is the beauty right now, and I think this is the great thing about your show is people are struggling right now, and every opportunity that we can to listen to somebody's perspective. This is what having great conversations is it gets us out of our own head and gets us into somebody else's head for a change. Because when we're in our own head, we don't tend to tell ourselves all the beautiful things about us. We tend to tell ourselves the negative things. So when I listen to you, honestly, you inspire me in just listening to your approach to simplifying life, simplifying food, simplifying exercise. And I think the great compliment of the GenWell Project to everything that you do and say is the fact of, hey, if it's not connecting with Tanya because she's not your personal coach, but you're listening in today, maybe the greatest thing you can do is go have a conversation with somebody about a topic that you're concerned about, your health in some way, shape, or form. And if you do need some professional coaching, then that option's there as well. But I think the greatest opportunity for all of us is make a connection with other people, have open, deep, beautiful conversations, understand people, actually ask them about how their life is going. And I'm telling you, if we all took those little baby steps to have those deeper conversations, I truly do believe we can make the world a happier and healthier place, one connection at a time.
Absolutely. And I thank you for this meaningful conversation, rich conversation. And, how can everyone find you and learn more about the GenWell Project?
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. They can head over to genwellproject.org. They can find out about the movement. They can sign up for our newsletter. And maybe most importantly, right now, is they can follow us on all of our social platforms. And I know it sounds crazy, but the social media isn't all bad. There's lots of opportunity to take in great information. And each day we post tips, tools, idea, research, and resources that you can lean on in order to help maintain your social connections. Every one of us sometimes gets in a little bit of a rut. And we hope that every day we can inspire you to think about, who can I reach out to today? So that's where they can head over. And I thank you, Tanya, for the opportunity to share this message with your community, because together we will make the world a happier and healthier place.
Oh, I love that. I just got the chills when you said that. Absolutely. And I thank you so much for being here. Continue to do the amazing work that you do and building powerful connections. So that's a wrap for today's show, everyone. I hope you have a chance to check out the GenWell Project, learn more, connect with friends and loved ones, uplift your bubble, and certainly take care of yourself in terms of your emotional and physical well-being. And we'll see you next Saturday, 11 a.m. on Sauga 960M for more of the Mindset Mentor.